6:43 in Trinidad and Tobago. Well, I also always remember Winston Gypsy Peter saying that Carnival and Bacchanal are the only, Bacchanal is the only word that rhymes properly with Carnival. So that whether it's online, whether it's offline, whether it's real, whether it's not happening and so on, there will still be Bacchanal, even with COVID-19. It seems like there may be some excitement brewing. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts has reiterated their position on Carnival and Carnival-related events. This follows concerns raised following videos and front-page headlines and front-page images, and now concerns raised by the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service over the staging of the event under the current health regulations. And if that isn't enough, the president of the Downtown Owners and Merchants Association, Gregory Aboud, has called for the government to consider hosting Carnival celebrations under COVID-19 guidelines. In an interview with TV6, he outlined a number of measures he believes can be applicable under these circumstances. Well, we are joined by a couple of personalities who are going to give us their perspective. With us already is Jules Sobian, CEO and Commander-in-Chief of Caesar's Army's band leader of the masquerade band Rogue. Jules, a very good morning to you. Thanks very much for joining us. I see you're still in the mood of the season with the decorations behind you.
Christmas never really ends for me.
All right. Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Are you in a festive mood with all this talk about whether or not Carnival is on or should it be on, or trying to stage it in some way, shape or form? What is your perspective on this entire situation?
Well, I would say that the spirit of Carnival is starting to evoke itself, and I'm starting to feel that the spirit is unbridled, and it just proved itself with the second concert that I attended as well.
And in attending that event, were you satisfied that all of the protocols were maintained? Because I saw a front page picture yesterday in the Express with the two entertainers on stage close together, whining on one another with no masks.
Yeah. I think the event was iconic in the respect that it's one of the 4 performing arts spaces. Most of the protocols were observed. I think because it was a first-time event, they may have had 1 or 2 glitches, but I attended the event with my wife. We had it was a great experience in terms of actually getting to experience some of the new aspects of the soca, etc., the music. All protocols were really observed. I think from start to finish, I felt very comfortable knowing that all these precautions were prepared for persons who are attending in that regard. So as a first-time event, I think it had some things that it needed to fix. Take, for example, I would not have had persons, patrons, at the front of the actual event itself, because it gave them a little more aspiration to probably enjoy themselves even further. But as a first-time event, I think it should be considered as something iconic, and it's something that we can all look forward to as a breath of fresh air, as a possibility that could happen.
So, I just want to understand your position. As I said, we should be joined by Rubadiri Victor, president of the Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago very shortly. He's just about getting online with a different device, I believe, to join us. But I just want to understand your position. Do you endorse the perspective that is being expressed by a few, including Gregory Aboud of DOMA, whatever the perspective might be, that there should be some COVID-19 regulated form of Carnival 2021?
I do endorse the view. I do believe that Mr. Aboud is a little late. This endorsement should have come at least last year when we were actually having these conversations before. I think his endorsement would have come highly recommended in the aid of what we are trying to achieve, which is to highlight and showcase what we know as the holistic of our culture. So I will continue to endorse it. I just think that Mr. Aboud's comments are a little bit late. And I think that Second Star, his attempt at trying to display and highlight and showcase the culture, I think is something that I would also endorse, because I think all the protocols and the necessary that would actually be able for us to experience what is our carnival was there. It was put into place. So I'm really of the thought process right now that we need to be a little more open to the possibilities that could be displayed at this time. Again, we are here to highlight and showcase our culture. We're not here to suppress it.
Let's bring in Rubadiri Victor into the discussion, because I think he's just joined us now. Rubadiri, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. We haven't spoken for quite some time, but just give us your perspective on this dialogue. If you see it is a dialogue worth having as to whether or not the authorities can be persuaded to permit Carnival or some form of Carnival observances to take place in 2021. Good morning to you.
Morning, everyone. Well, two things. One, I agree with Jules in terms of Second Star's stuff. I think, but Queen's Hall themselves have been doing concerts, and they've found a way with Ministry of Health and that kind of stuff to host things with COVID restrictions being observed. And Second Star just took it a little further in terms of, bringing soca and dynamism and youth energy and that kind of stuff to it. So we endorse that fully. As regards Gregory Aboud's statement, I'm on the record as saying that I agree with Gregory. There are three things. One is that we cannot abdicate our role as the mother of carnivals, as the greatest show. So we need to have one, a strong virtual carnival presence. Two, some kind of physical something that could be done, symbolic and those kinds of things that represents that. And three, I think that we should also dress Port of Spain. We should take the opportunity to dress Port of Spain. I know there's this big thing about the redesign of the city and all those things, but just in terms of dressing Port of Spain, in terms of its brand as a UNESCO city of music and as the home of Carnival, we have an opportunity to do that. Those three things, and so I welcome Gregory's statement. And as Jules said, it's about 3 months too late. But I mean, we still have time. We have about less than a month, but there's still time to do something. And I should say about the NCC is mistaken, is continually mistaken about its role, just like the Ministry of Cultures in the past and stuff. The NCC's role should not be as a promoter. And the reason why the NCC has opted out of the virtual carnival and all these other kinds of things is because it fundamentally sees itself as a promoter of events. And that's not really what the NCC is a facilitator. It's supposed to be a facilitator of carnivalists and mass people. And if it saw itself as that in that role, then it could have facilitated the innovations and stuff that people want to happen on the ground. And that's where I think we need to be right now.
And gentlemen, we're going to continue our discussion after the news. So we still have a few minutes left to go to the top of the news. Let me go back to Jules Sobian. Jules, we are in this entire situation because of COVID-19. I take your point about the whole issue of the importance of Carnival in the national space and so on. People might have their different views on its relevance and so on, but let's go with that particular dialogue. Is it worth the risk of staging events? And as I said, the clear evidence was that there were violations at that Queen's Hall event. I mean, people can deny it as much as they want. It's right there on the front page of the Express yesterday. Is it worth the risk of having a super spreader situation created by any of these events that may be held with the greatest of regulations? You cannot regulate properly an environment where people are going to free up.
I think it's very possible. I think I can endorse it. Just given the protocols, as I said before, you can have a trial, just like a vaccine. You have trials, and you would realize that you have some work to do. So I think that, let's take for example, Fazir, if it is that Macy's Thanksgiving parade. I mean, we can still look at having a parade that is well guided, that has the protocols in place, that encourages persons to enjoy the show at home. So there are ways that we can try to still find the possibilities. It doesn't mean that, based on Second Star, and yes, there was a front page sensationalism with second star Nyla dancing. I mean, these are things that we can now look at and say, this needs to be implemented and fixed. And we can still have a safe show. We can have a show where you can stay in your seats and view the experience. It's not really about a wine and jam. It's about experiencing something that is our culture. So I do believe that, yes, it's a spectacle. So ideally, I think that, yes, maybe it is that not everything went right with something like Second Star Show, but I do believe that if we work at it, as Rubadiri said, we need facilitators who will ensure that what we can do is possible and within the safety guidelines of the COVID
I think
pandemic.
the Premier League football, English Premier League is an excellent example of all the leagues and stuff. The Premier League protocols and stuff are pretty good. They have brought back $1 billion industry, sport, football, English football. And they have been managing it pretty well.
But that is not true, Rubadiri, because, and I'm sure you're aware, because obviously you follow English Premier League football, even if it's from the only point of seeing how it is being managed. A couple of managers have said that this thing needs to stop. That you have a situation in the UK where there are tier 4 lockdowns in many parts of the UK, 75% of the country, and this preference is being given to football as if it's more important than lives and the welfare and the health of citizens.
Yeah, but the thing is that the Premier League has worked. What I'm saying is that despite what has been going on in England around it and that kind of stuff, the Premier League has worked and stuff in terms of the amount of people that have contracted anything and that kind of stuff. Of course, if England itself continues to go up and up and up and up, yes, they will have to prefigure it. But the thing is that the Premier League has shown us that they are now into their 6th or 7th month, that it is possible to manage stuff even in a space where they had so many issues and those kinds of things. And I'm just saying that these are people who look at a phenomena that is important to them industrially, culturally, and those kinds of things, and they figured it out. They worked it out. And we should be doing the same. We who have less cases and those kinds of things, who had the time, who have an excellent Ministry of Health team and those kinds of things, we should be looking at these things.
Rubadiri, just pause for a moment because we have to take a break. We have to pause for the news.
But the other thing is that Carnival is not only wine and jam, is that we keep coming back to this thing as if Carnival is only about people grinding up on one another.
Okay, but we're going to continue that discussion. Just pause for a while, Rubadiri, because we have to pause for the news, but we're going to continue this dialogue when we come back after the break, after the news as well. And of course, we do have our Facebook competition where we want to highlight some of your images as well, but we'll return to that discussion after the news. Here's the sunset captured at Trin City. It looks like the area walking towards the highway from the Trin City Mall. And very nice images as well with the amount of cloud cover. Now for a couple of submissions by Danielle and Devon Lemessy of Belmont. Again, this is this very familiar area where the river meets the sea in Manzanilla, and this is the Ottawa River, the very still waters of the Ottawa River. When you look from that bridge, which was previously a wooden bridge and is now a concrete and asphalt and a proper bridge, and many people still have nostalgia about that wooden bridge going plack, plack, plack as you go across and being nervous if you might fall into the water and the very calm, still and possibly deep waters of the Ottawa River. We go to the news and then we continue with our dialogue with Jules Sobian and Rubadiri Victor. 5 minutes after 7 o'clock in Trinidad and Tobago as we continue our discussion in the middle of your business on this Wednesday. Good of you to still be with us on Morning Edition. We still have with us Rubadiri Victor, President of the Artists Coalition of Trinidad and Tobago, and Jules Sobian, CEO and Commander-in-Chief of Caesar's Army and band leader with Rogue, and still very much in the spirit of the Christmas season based on his ornaments behind him. But Jules, I mean, you alluded to it just a little while ago. in reference to the comments from Gregory Aboud, which has reignited this discussion together with the Second Star event. Is this all too little too late?
It is. I wouldn't say it's late, but it is late. The endorsement would have gone well in terms of those who really want to highlight and showcase the culture, and it would have helped reinforce our arguments that we should. It is our duty to make sure and highlight and showcase what we know as Trinidad and Tobago Carnival.
And before I go to Rubadiri for his continuing perspective, can we actually have something that is properly regulated, that people watch from either a safe distance or watch from the safety of their television screens and so on, and still retain what people will call the spirit of Carnival? Because doesn't that involve the human engagement and a level of proximity of human beings for it to be considered really reflective of the spirit of Carnival, Jules?
Yeah, because let's just say, okay, so take for example for Z, right? I sit on the board of NAPA, and even from since last year, it was mandated that we should look at the performance space in terms of the possibilities. That was a mandate for the board to make sure that we could, these shows that can be taking place during the new norm, how possible is it? And you would have seen that the 4 performance spaces are open. Napa, Sapa, I think Naparima Bowl as well as Queen's Hall. And the procedures were sound in terms of having shows. I think what happened with Second Star is that he may be classified as a fet when really and truly all the protocols that are necessary in terms of being in place were still observed. So someone else with another type of show may have gone across and actually produced this show without that sort of sensationalism. Now, I do understand, as I said, I was a participant of the show. I believe that all protocols were observed. Myself and my wife had an excellent time being entertained by this show in Queen's Hall. So yes, as I said before, maybe 1 or 2 small glitches, or as I said, it wasn't a perfect show, but it still proves to be an iconic representation of the possibilities that can happen. And just like that, if it is that I decided to do the story of Carnival, a theatric representation of Carnival and the culture, is it that I would go under such scrutiny when all protocols are implemented in a safe space? I think we have to be able to uplift the possibilities right now rather than suppress them. And it's unfortunate that happened with Second Star. But I can tell you, as being a person who experienced it on my own, myself and my wife, we felt very safe, very secure. It was well managed, even up to the end. It was not a helter-skelter of persons heading into the lobby. It was orderly. It was a perfect show. But they had a few glitches that just need the attention of those who are the cherubs of the COVID guidelines, etc., to make it a perfect show. So ideally, I think there are possibilities, and we just in a rat race to suppress what is us.
Okay, and I mean, time probably may not allow us to develop that point about the suppression thing, but Rubadiri, Victor, in the time that we have available, is it just in the way that Jules would have expressed it, that suppression of that desire to not so much free up and get on, but just to celebrate and express yourself, which is a quintessential Trini thing to many people. But again, because of the issues of COVID-19, Rubadiri, is it even possible to entertain that? Because and I mean, while I take Jules's point about the event, the fact is that you had people who were not masked in close proximity. That is a fact. That is there from the image. And some will argue, well, while he might say that while you're beating up on Second Star and not treating other people the same way, the argument could be put forward that they're getting preferential treatment because both Second Star and Nyla Blackburn should be charged for being in such close proximity for not wearing a mask. The point I'm trying to make, taking a long time to get to my question, Rubadiri, is that the very nature of the events around Carnival make it difficult in a time of COVID-19 to have those events without without having some sort of breach that could create a problem health-wise?
Carnival is made up of dozens of traditions, and we keep flattening Carnival into, again, like jam and wine. That everything that happens in Carnival will eventually end up with somebody whining on somebody else, or something that we kind of have this feeling. But Carnival is made up of literally dozens and dozens of traditions. The king and queens, the traditional masks, the stick fighting, the kiddies, all kinds of traditions and stuff in terms of costume making, in terms of in terms of culinary skills, into all kinds of different kinds of things make up the Carnival.
So just to use your point, Rubadiri, about the Premier League, you believe that those events should be held or could be held without live audiences, without spectators, and be held safely?
Yeah, when we had done up the thing that we presented to the NCC, when we tried to convince them that this was necessary, this was since September, I believe. We had done up 96 hours of programming with 100 and something shows, which had broken down the Carnival into its multifarious different traditions. And we had deconstructed nearly every single tradition that goes into the Carnival and figured out ways to make it into telegenic, COVID-safe events that were interactive, because that is what was necessary. So that there were ways to do the king and queens. Now, we are a month away from Carnival. It's difficult to do king and queens. We should have made that announcement 3 months ago so that people would have been creating. Now, king and queens, that's a spectacle at the heart of the Carnival. That is something that we could have been selling virtually, and that could have won internationally in terms of only us could bring that to the planet and that kind of stuff. And we would have had those, all the guys were calling me, all the king and queen guys, Rubadiri, ting. And I says, but that's the NCC who made that call. I can't, that's the NCC call. So the thing is that there were enough traditions that are easier to translate into telegenic events and communicate in that way. And again, sitting down with the Ministry of Health and those things. The thing is that a virtual Carnival is a telegenic event. First and foremost, it is a filmmaking event that is made for screens. It is not a live event that you're trying to capture on film. It is first and all something that you're creating for screens. So that was that. If we approach the virtual Carnival in that way, we would start to answer a lot of questions in terms of it would immediately give us the opportunity to solve a lot of the COVID protocol things. Again, we had all that information. We and it's unfortunate that the NCC took the route that they did, which was seeing themselves primarily as promoters. And if they couldn't do the thing, well, then nobody, that kind of stuff. When they should have been facilitators, made the announcement, open it up to the visionaries and all the people and the stakeholders and those kinds of things to do stuff. And then sitting down with the COVID committee task force and those kinds of things, we work out stuff, and we will be well on our way right now.
We have a month. Sorry to interrupt you, but we have to leave it here for the moment. Time has run on us, unfortunately. But,
no problem.
Again,
but Trinidad and Tobago, as the mother of Carnival, needs to have a powerful virtual presence.
All right.
Port of Spain, as the mother city of Carnival, needs to be dressed and jeweled as brand Carnival. And those are things that could happen despite COVID and those kinds of things. We need to seize that brand.
The discussion will have to continue. Sorry to interrupt you, Rubadiri, and Jules, thanks very much for being with us as well. Time has run out on us, but I think you've got the chance to make that point as well. And no doubt, the discussion will continue for some time, even with the government position made clear, and time is running out indeed towards the actual days, what would usually be Carnival. But here are a couple images submitted by Keon Williams. Now here's an image captured first. This is a really lovely couple of images that are presented, and I think they might garner quite a few votes. Now here's an image captured offshore by Errol Burke. at one of the TSP fields, showing us not just the horizon, but the image of that what would appear to be a ship there away in the distance, and the clouds, how impressive and how ominous that would look when you look at it from an offshore perspective. Lots of interesting images in that segment. We'll be right back.